The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is true, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. Tonight, we are so glad, I'm glad to have this opportunity to do a presentation with our very own Grand Sheikh Taj Tarik Bey. And I may not be giving all of the normal information, but as you can see, we are
at the office.
We are here. We are here together. I'm not even going to waste time doing a whole bunch of giving announcements and so forth and opening and so forth. But we are here together. This is the first time. Today is the first time.
6 months.
We've seen each other in person in 6 months. In 6 months. So this is a milestone. This is an absolute milestone. Let's welcome Grand Sheikh back on the scene. And here we are face to face like we usually do, so we can we can banter with each other and in person. So I'm going to let
just
you give
update, converse.
Yeah. So let somebody know we're on, please. Tonight we're going to do a presentation that we are excited about, dealing with war. Right?
Yeah.
War.
Now, again, first Islam. Assalamu alaikum.
Happy Holy Day.
Shalom. Body Makum, Bona booked. We're going to have an old discussion that is really still current events.
Right. So, and of course, every time Grand Sheikh comes up with topic that he wants to talk about, yours truly has to do a lot of cramming. And I gotta study things that he knows. Tonight, we're going to be talking about privatization, war, invocation. And if you see how war invocation is spelled different, and when you gave that to me, I kind of thought that can't be real, but it is real. It is. I know it is. I know it is. So as I said, I want to welcome you to another eye-opening and soul-awakening broadcast presented here at the House of Reawakening Minds. And tonight, as I said, it's no ordinary conversation. You're here by divine appointment. Let somebody else know that they need to be here too. So we're standing in a time where much of what we believe to be ours has been quietly seized. And you've been talking about it over the years. It's been seized, it's been sold, it's been transferred and commodified. Right.
Yes, it's manifest.
And this is not just about politics or paperwork. It's about war.
It is.
It's war, a privatization war. And tonight
with my mentor and co-teacher. I'm actually his assistant. I'm not even a co-teacher. GSK Taj Tarik. We want to invoke the wisdom of our ancestors and the codes of higher law and the fire of truth to break the silence. And we want to talk about this subject tonight.
And I'd appreciate it too if you read your own present communication to myself in relationship to how we got here, what it is, etc.
Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, what most people don't understand is that war is not always, and this is why I sent you, fought with guns or tanks.
Exactly.
War can be fought through policy, through contract, through registration, through quiet assumption. When your rights are privatized, your name, your land, your body, your energy, you have been drafted into a war that you never consented to.
That's why they call it silent.
Right. So privatization, as we're going to talk about tonight, is not progress. It's conquest, by another name.
Yes, absolutely that.
When a corporate structure is imposed over a nation, the people become property.
Yes.
State property and all of that. The land becomes an asset.
Exactly.
And the birthright becomes a commodity.
And everyone's for sale.
Absolutely.
And this is where, when, what you really expressed, Dr. G, is I think where a lot of times when the issue of birthright theft is brought up to people, they don't analyze the content, what it really means.
Mm-hmm.
And to a great part, what you introduced in your opening is exactly that in its function. And I'm looking at a lot of times as people respond to different things that are presented, that's not in their mind when they're thinking, or like when birthright theft is mentioned to them. And because these things are not refined and defined, people still become subject to the artificial jurisdiction or the trap. And this is where, you talk about the assumed jurisdiction, the assumed contract, because when it really boils down to, it's what we talked about for years, what is called conversion.
Mm.
And the conversion is where people build shell companies, use assumed authority to move resources, which would include your labor. The way they steal your labor is not so much in the concept that people have of controlling you on a job. It is actually the income tax, where they steal the fruit of your labor.
Okay.
And so your labor essentially is dead, not in your mind. In your mind, you're thinking that you're working towards accumulating wealth. Now, the conversion is them stealing your wealth through unlawful and unconstitutional tax, but presenting the position that the tax is both legitimate and lawful. And once you, the being, assume that it is and participate, that participation is assumed as consent and contractual. And that's that substance, that gray area, where a lot of people over the generations have actually lost the equity in their property in a graduated format that they assume was normal, and it wasn't, and it isn't. The invocation is the multi-levels or the staged operation, whereas private people, because this has to be understood, private people who have actually hijacked the governing platform. In other words, they're personating.
So would that be just for an example, BlackRock?
Exactly what we talked about 2 years ago.
There's a couple other. Okay,
That's exactly.
okay, for example.
now, and that's what's been happening. Now, one of the things that I wanted to bring up relative to conversational opportunity is these things are becoming more obvious to people on a larger scale, not because we haven't been talking about it for 50 years, but because middle-class Europeans are now talking about it.
Right. BlackRock, Halliburton.
Yes.
Those other
Meaning
names.
that now that is without doubt non-controversial, incontroversial, non-contradictable that the middle class in Western Hemisphere social structure is being wiped out, and it's obvious. Meaning that it doesn't. There's no conjecture, right? There's no need. You can analyze, but there's no need to analyze. It's there. I mean, it's obvious, right? And what's been happening is that many of the Europeans on many of their platforms are stating things that we've been stating to the people for 45, 50 years, but was not taken serious. Not that people rejected it, it was taken for the most part when you study people's responses that have been taken as, oh, interesting, our opinion, connected to Moors, but not to others. You can get into it if you want to, not so, or they think it's paperwork, things like that, right? When actually these were instruments to declare rebuttal. See, because this is what it is. Whenever there's what you would call rebuttal to a fraud or misrepresentation, it establishes not only in the ether, but in a response directive that you did not agree, you did not consent, you do not concur, right? And in the process, even though the corruption is deeply established, on the long term, what it does, it chips away at the bond system. Because remember, the bond system is really human trafficking. It's based on human trafficking.
Right. So
it's not said,
but it is.
It's done.
It's done. Right. So when you think in terms of the legal,
the mechanisms.
Yeah.
Now, those of you who are listening, take some of these bullet points, because questions that will arise logically will not be answered totally in this venue.
Right.
But for people to be able to go over notes and also begin to protect themselves. Now, remember, as we've been talking, and we've emphasized it in the last couple of years, when I said that, people that went into debt for any so-called mortgages, new homes, cars, and things like that are going to be underwater.
Yeah.
It's manifesting now.
I got a car like that anyway.
No, I'm telling you what people are talking from.
I know. Yeah.
But the deal of it is, if they don't understand what they're working with, they can get frustrated, and that's all right. It's not all right, but it's all right. But they have no tools to work with. They don't have any rebuttal. They'll just simply suffer the consequence of estate loss, not knowing that that's what's taking place.
So I was thinking in terms of, somebody saying, well, I have, they'll say mortgage, they won't say a debt pledge, but they have a mortgage, and they'll say, well, I can afford it, so to speak, and I'm paying it. But what we don't know is that they have the mechanism sometimes whereby they would call a loan due. And
they're doing that. And see, this
even
is
if you may have a 30-year note, and now it might be year 15, and they're like, pay the rest of it.
This is what people don't understand.
Right.
You can be, according to the imposed contract, current, and even ahead, and they can call it. And this is back to people not understanding hypothecation, which we've been telling them.
Right.
The conversion, because this is the conversion of private property into the public venue under the guise of government emergency powers, etc., or war powers, when in fact those who are calling or exercising that sovereign authority never had it and don't have it. This is, and like sometimes when we're discussing, and I would say to you, and because I've gotten responses to the people off, not on the video, but in general conversation as I've traveled, where people, after they've gotten into trouble, will come to me and ask on things that we talked about years ago, because it becomes conscious to them. They become conscious of what it was saying. It's not that, like you're talking to people about certain things and it dawns on them later.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're dealing with the problem.
Absolutely.
And then they're trying to do a crash course for themselves to try to save their estate that they didn't even know was an estate or part of an estate. So an estate is not just land, as you already comprehend. It's all things related to you, possessions, rights, abstracts. Right. Cars, your bicycle, your sneaks, your clothes,
your dog,
your housing, right? And
I say, I said it kind of jokingly, your dog or your pet, but they make you get licenses to have a pet,
Exactly.
So everything is affected by these people that have no real jurisdiction except that which we.
And this is why I want to set the bullet points. So first of all, write these things down, because we've referenced them many times. But what I discovered in conversations along the way, Dr. G, is you can't assume, but you have to assume that when people respond to certain things, that at least they've done the research.
Yeah.
And you find that people can mention things that you've said. But then when you get into the conversation, you recognize that they've mentioned because they've heard of it, but they haven't studied it to recognize what you said to them. And how then people move on with a conversation as if they have an understanding, and you assume that they do because you've been doing it so long, right?
Yeah.
So write these bullet points down. Clearfield Doctrine, that's the Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, 318 U.S. 363 to 371. Repeat. Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, 318 U.S. 363 to 371. And it's important for people to really get that concept, because it's real, it's not just the case itself. They must have in their mind the concept behind it in understanding the privatization war. Now, so that's one. Also, we want them to study the Coinage Act, because we have to support different things that we presented to you in relationship to reclaiming, or, like when you mentioned before, Dr. G, that you started reading some of the stuff, and you had one concept of, when I was talking about reversion of a state, the reversioner, and you was mentioning how you viewed it, and then how after you reviewed it again, your concept about it changed. Yeah. You're assuming one thing when it actually is another thing. But this is, when we get a collage of information, that can easily happen because we haven't been groomed in true jurisprudence. And so sometimes we assume that certain things are established to mean one thing when they actually are not. And one of the important things about the Clearfield Doctrine that must be comprehended by the people is that it is to flush your mind of the misconception that the people talking to you have sovereign authority or ever had it. And what's been happening is that people have been responding to the persons operating, quote unquote, not but as their mask as government, and have been robbing you and taxing you unlawfully. But they've been doing it deliberately, but they've been doing it in small increments over the decades so that the people wouldn't suspect that they're actually waging war on the people. Now, the other thing I want them to look at is the Trading with the Enemy Act, 1917. So just pull that up, just, so that we can just calmly hit some points of reference. Trading with the Enemy Act, 1917. And of course, the War Tax Act. And you got to look at them all together. And it's sort of like, because of the time span, people sometimes look at these things as not being related, when actually these are things that have been systematically put in place to bring about an outcome in the future, which is what's manifesting now, right? Now, when people not knowing the origins of a lot of these economic and social problems that we're suffering now, they'll look at them in a vacuum, not understanding that these things were planned over the decades, not accidental and not without knowledge of the eventual outcome. These were intentional acts. And as we were discussing, myself, Cynthia, and Brother Chris, as we were talking today, as they picked me up and stuff like that, that we must always keep in mind the real geopolitical canvas operating not just here at North America, but on the planet, on the world. And that is that the war that never ended, which is the 500-year war, which is why you always hear me talk about Unum Sanctum.
Right. So that
is the real canvas. When you forget that, it's sort of like when you're laxed and you think things are different, they can control the narrative. See, in other words, like this, we've got to get the people to a level where the interjections of diversion activity, though it may be relevant to what's happening, are really designed to divert you from a base canvas operation that never change.
Right. So there's a couple more things that we might want to have them look at. Act. So the Emergency Banking Act, Relief Act of 1933, because we know it happened in 1933, and the Federal Reserve Act also.
Yes.
Well, that was in 1913, and then the Social Security Act of 1935. So the way they did that, I mean, I think the federal, central currency control that allowed the debt system, and then, like you said, the trade with the enemy.
All of it deals with human capital.
They were all connected.
Resources. They're all connected, and this must be understood by people, and I think a lot of people don't comprehend it. There's an assumption that politicians at some time came up with these ideas, when actually all of them have always been connected, but introduced in a manner that creeps.
Right.
And so people say, as an example, if they're looking at the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many people are not looking at the War Revenue Acts of 1917.
Right.
Nor the Emergency Banking Relief Act of 1933.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, again, why they don't like, it's sort of like their position is, if they collage the people with it, the people would have recognized generations ago that they're waging war on us. And it would become obvious why motive. Not emotionally approaching the assassination of Lincoln, but understanding the political motives behind it. There's multiple, but the main motive was to overthrow the republic. Now, people have to put in their mind, what advantage were they seeking with the act of overthrowing the republic? See, so if in the history they're always talking about the assassination itself, people are looking at the morals, lack of morality, the treasonous nature, things like that, and not observing that it was an overthrow of the republic. What is the overthrow of the republic? An overthrow of the Constitution. What is an overthrow of the Constitution? The overthrow of the Constitution is an overthrow of the Ordinance of 1787. What is the overthrow of the Ordinance of 1787? The overthrow of the treaty that supersedes it all, that constructs the foundation of the operational law on the land, protecting the people from corrupt government. That's what they don't want people to observe.
But the interesting thing, Grashik, is that the trading with the enemy actually made the people, the enemies.
Yes,
It made us the enemy. Yeah, right. So they made the people the enemies.
Because they always were. See,
right.
This is the whole point. Now, that's a declaration of it.
Right.
But remember, the position that they held, it was already that. This is where we need to get. This is where we need to make the connection. This is where we need people to really comprehend. It didn't come to that. That was simply a public declaration of it, what was already in place. No different like right now. No different than right now, you'll see the controversy around Donald Trump and Elon Musk dissolving literally departments
Mm-hmm.
connected with the federal or the executive branch of governing body. I won't say the government, because remember, they dissolved the government sine die. See, these are the little subtleties that you recognize when you see people discussing these things
Mm-hmm.
that they seem to keep missing. You know how they're talking and they're talking on it and not talking in it?
Right. And then I ask you today, what did you make of the fact that it seems as if, at least it's being reported, that Elon Musk is now attacking Donald Trump.
Yes.
And I ask you, was he preserving his financial business and so forth and backing out because he was suffering so much from, the backlash? And you said,
it's theater.
Right.
Now, because remember, what have we been telling the people for years? The masses, the people, are not and have not been allowed to have money. Now, those who are in what they refer to themselves as the elite or ruling class know that the issue is a voucher system to the Sister QV Trust. It's an authorization of use of resource, not money. When you're looking at the dead pledges, 1913, this is why I often remind people to look at what was taking place on Jekyll Island, 1913. The emphasis has been put on whether there's money or not, the fiat system, etc. And other than with the Round Table and Great Seal, very few platforms were ever talking about the conversion of allodial titles and aboriginal titles. These are two important things, into mortgages and deeds, 1913, that didn't exist prior to 1913. And people aren't looking at timeline and they're not looking at function.
But they, when you look at the history, they meant 1910. So it was 3 years out that they were formulating
it's
this.
Already meaning that these things were in place.
It didn't just pop up in 1913.
They were implementation, meaning they create a narrative, They test it on the public. They work around it. They create other problems to get people talking about other issues. Then they bring in their intended effect, disguised or covered under the guise of cure or fixing, when it's actually the implementation of conversion of your estate.
So when you're talking about privatization, the
That's what it
Federal
is.
Reserve System is
privatization.
because it is not government.
Exactly. Now, and here we go again. As long as they can keep the people thinking that these people are government, they can keep the gray area that makes it difficult for people to comprehend almost everything we've been talking about.
Right.
And it also keeps the people from interjecting remedy even themselves when or if it's available. What is happening now that we were talking about downstairs is that it's become so blatantly obvious that it can't be ignored anymore. And that relates to the maturing of US Treasury bonds, and no one's buying them. And so the interest on the debt created by them, which was created fraudulently in the first place, they're trying to convert it onto the people, as they have been doing through, number one, property tax, two, income tax. And the fact is, and was, neither of those taxes were or are constitutional. But because they've matured, and as we've been telling people for years, many nations have bought into the system. There is collapsing other nations' economies. This has much to do with the political motive as why the United States Corporation Company has maintained close to 900 military bases in different countries, because they knew it would come to an apex where it starts collapsing systems. And they're already prepared to do what? They're neutralizing people, overthrowing governments, having immediate points of reference for initiating covert operations, whether they call them wars or not. That's what you see has been taking place. However, we're not arguing the morality or the immorality of it. That's arguable. We're presenting what the people are seeing now that's clashing, not for the sake of arguing an opinion, but for them to start recognizing the collapse is happening. It's not going to happen. It's happening. And because it's current, and people who don't understand it don't see it as current, they may look at it as something to converse that's going to happen when it's already in process. Now, and this is what we talked about in the last few times too, Dr. G. Because it's already in process, those persons who have been personating as government, are directly and indirectly warring on the people, not with mere attitude. In other words, they're in the process, as we're speaking, destroying families. Literally, and people. And because they're doing less things to hide it under programming, because they really don't have the time, the people feel the pain and don't know the source. This is, again, why we're talking like we're talking. And because the people don't know that most of the people that has been operating as government are actually, and this is not speculation, Satanists. It's really an organized criminal cartel.
That's right.
It is known around the world. We're the people here are the only ones that don't demonstrate that they're cognizant of it. They may have heard of it.
You know, a lot of people think cartel just deals with drugs. because you always hear it in terms of drug cartel, but yeah. And any group of independent entities that control,
criminal,
that join together to control a market is a cartel.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Now, but what people need to comprehend here is that this didn't just begin. It is branched into the 500-year war that the people don't relate to. And so, not unlike you will see when people start examining the interchanges and intercourse between the nation states, where they keep discovering that Britain, France, United States, Germany in collusion, keep breaking treaties. Why? Because the treaties have been so much a diversion for the people to put their guard down while they slowly progress to undermine, to protect the unum sanctum operations, 500 years wars, which is their ultimate goal, regardless of what they show the people. This has much to do with the attitude that's being reflected against, particularly at this time, Russia.
Okay.
Now, what has happened also even recently, where they'll accredit it to Ukrainian operations when it's actually MI6, Mossad, CIA, U.S. corporation company operatives, BlackRock, the whole investment, the whole human traffic investment, right? But the masses keep on saying the United States in their mind as a country. At the mask of impersonation is in the people's view, their mental and political view, which is why it makes it difficult for people to sometimes feel comfortable with our conversations. You understand? And that's where the Clearfield doctrine comes in. You see?
Right.
See, it's sort of like, as long as the people keep thinking that they're your, quote, your possessive government, that's a contract.
Yeah.
In other words, you've accepted that they have your divine sovereignty to act in your name, which is what they've been doing. Trading with the Enemy Act is that they're warring against you.
True. I mean, they never say that.
They don't have to.
They don't say that, but
Everything has shown it.
Yeah, but then when you look into, because we don't read, in large part, a lot of things just go by, and people don't even say, wait, well, hold up. Even when things are even being talked about before they enact them, we don't get involved until after the fact, and then you find out something has happened, and people want to go be up in arms.
Yes.
About it. So
now this is again, Dr. G, when people start doing any research at all, even things that appear unrelated, they keep finding out, the ugly picture of U.S. corporation subdivisional government departments infiltrating domestically any and all groups that work towards constitutional enforcement or to help the people, whether they're dealing with civil rights or anything. You start discovering that everything was undermined from the beginning once you start doing research, and then people start getting emotionally charged or making arguments, when the deal of it is, if they weren't naive, they would have never put their guard down. What we're presenting is the mirror for us to start facing our own reflection of ignoring the reality on faith that these people were ever faithful, were ever honorable, and whether they ever intended to be. And while we were spending generations trusting them or trying to work with them to fix things, they were dismantling everything that was in place for our securities. But presenting their activity as legislating things to help the people when everything they were doing is to support the 500-year war. And they never vary from it. But because, and so it doesn't become obvious, they have to create these narratives. No different than, like when we talked before, Dr. J, about the intellectual problems, the intellectual property problems that are manifest now. They've always been manifest, but that are being discussed now in the music and entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. And when you look behind it, it's far bigger than the people that are being presented. We don't have to name names.
Right.
That it actually goes into, like what you always knew, and those who really know always knew, that the music industry was taken over by the CIA and Mossad. That's why all the managers happen to have dual citizenship.
Right.
90% of all the managers, did you notice that they all happen to have dual citizenship, and they happen to be from that little place that they started after those treaties about 100 years ago, mm-hmm. and they took over Canaan land. And people have dual citizenship, and the War Tax Act has been used to support that operations under the guise that they were taxing the people here to support things here. That tax was initiated to give to them people there who have been claiming to be somebody that they're not.
Absolutely.
On an ongoing war system that our people, most of them to this day, don't suspect. However, one of the things that you see going on right now, middle class Europeans here, because it's clearly clear that they're crashing the middle class, are talking.
Yes.
And there's a few people that I was mentioning, and I won't mention names right now, but I think it'll become obvious. And there's a couple of very highly qualified people dealing from a jurisdictional and a judicial position, initiating suits against local municipalities on the property tax that was initiated during that period of time, which were never constitutional. And that's what I talked about in here when I talked about the 16th Amendment. Mm-hmm. When someone had mentioned at the mall that some organized Europeans had been studying that and picked up that, not that they didn't know this stuff, but that inspired them because they didn't expect to be thrown under the bus. And they're making videos now, but they're organized and they're suing across the country. One of the areas where this operating right now, and one of the things when I was doing just simply casual research, trying to look at some of the things that some of these people were talking about, related to things that I've been saying for years, is in Houston, Texas, right now. And because Cynthia, well, that's the reason why, because of Cynthia.
Right.
And I was looking at it and I said, I knew it was coming, but the fact that you see organized people competently organizing,
right.
And I point that out because it's an opportunity for people who have been sharing with us for years or doubted our position for years to jump on board to limit the damage that is being done, not just will be, is being done currently to their own conversion of their estates, whether these people are losing cars that they can't pay for anymore, because you already know it's not paid anyway, and houses that they're underwater with, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that consider themselves pretty secure, not secured, but stable, finding themselves threatened with the curb currently.
Wow.
threatened with the curb, right? This knowledge will help them, but they need to be organized and they need to go after, quote unquote, pay attention, the tax assessment officers and their records.
But see, now here in
I'm being
Delaware,
specific.
but in Delaware, the tax assessment is being done by an outside contractor.
Hold on. Yes, still. Now listen. Now remove the but.
Okay.
Is someone assessing and taxing?
Well, they've gone.
Is it happening?
Yes.
Well, stop. Now, let's be clear. The fact that they contracted it outside themselves was to protect themselves because they're operating in a state of treason.
And they averaged a 500% increase.
The privatization is them contracting their duties to out someone else so that when the fall comes, it goes on outside corporations and ordinary people who have been given jobs within those venues in order to compromise them so that when they recognize the corruption, that they won't go against it because their jobs are tied to it.
Wow.
Now, I want you to look at this, Dr. J. The fact that the nation stopped buying the treasury bonds makes it moot, which means it doesn't matter whether the people go after them or not. The system is accelerated to the collapse.
Okay.
Meaning that they can ignore it, but it ain't going to ignore them. The people can ignore it, it won't ignore them. Now, back to what I was saying to you before, Dr. J, and I'm saying it now. Went over to the house at the building, even though we're still at the House of Reawakening Minds, right?
Right.
When I said to you, pay attention to Trump.
Yeah.
Pay attention to Deutsche Bank.
Yes.
Right. It may come out some, but the hybrid Europeans are going to start telling the people because they're trying to save their estates. Right. Even though the collusion of how they claim the estates has been built in fraud anyway, with the corporate operations using land patents and other things to transfer our land to them. Now it's being undermined by those among themselves who have hijacked the government.
So
that's, in other words, what you see, APAC, that's the real Congress. APAC is the real Congress.
Yeah, I wonder what
people won't accept the reality. It's not that it's not there to be seen, Dr. J.
I'm not saying that, but it just seems.
But the damage is people's denial has allowed it to entrench to the point that it can't be fixed. I mean, this is where we're at with this. It can't be fixed. Now, so
how do they come out of that, though? How do they come out of all
here we go.
Okay.
Now, what have we been doing for years, Dr. J?
I mean, you've
been giving people remedy they didn't act on.
True.
A handful did, most didn't. They allowed APAC to get them arguing about paperwork and against paperwork and misrepresenting paperwork, as if the paperwork of the claim was the problem.
Right.
Yes. Diversion. Meanwhile, they were converting the people's estates. And we've already passed the point of no return. In other words, we're not at a point of that they can fix it. They're working it out. What they're trying to do, and this goes back to what, like you mentioned to me, they have some notices that, Elon is going against Trump, and then why ain't Trump cussing him back type thing, right? And what I'm saying to you is theater, Dr. G. They are, pay attention. Pay attention. They are executing writs of dissolution starting on the federal level of the executive branch. They're not firing individuals, they're firing departments.
Right, you did say that.
That means what? What does it mean? What are those actions? See, let's not look at what people say.
Okay.
Let's look at what the action is.
Okay.
What does the action indicate?
I think you said dissolution. I mean,
it indicates bankruptcy.
Oh, okay. Insolvency.
So if it's bankrupt, what that does also indicate the results of the sine die action.
It's finally coming.
It's not, it's the fruit is manifest.
Took a lot of years.
In other words, they've overthrown the republic, now they're overthrowing families. And our people still don't get it. But they're going to get it, and they're getting it because it's personal now.
Yeah, like
see, long as it wasn't personal and the people could look at it from a perspective that we're just having an abstract conversation about quote unquote de facto government, and it's something for them to observe or not observe, be interested in or not be interested in, not understanding that those persons' operations and the basis of their wealth was the people's labor, including their babies before they were even born.
True.
To support their private corporations disguised and perpetrated falsely as government. But they need the people to say our or the government. And that is the basis of their authority.
That's what gives them legitimacy.
That's why you don't call them they never were and are not your government.
Right. So, when you look around, we talk about privatization, though.
That's the war. The war is that we didn't recognize it's the war.
The prison system.
That's private.
Okay.
It's and the investment,
the air, the water, the
major,
schools, your DNA, everything is being private.
That's the war is the fact. See, this is the deal. Where is the authority upon which the privatization is vested? It didn't exist and doesn't exist. Clearfield Doctrine. This is why I always reference that so that the people can, because you can show the documentation, show it to the people, and if they don't understand the concept behind it, they're just looking at the data of the law case. But they're not paying attention that it's telling you that these people are personating government and claiming sovereign authority to tax you, to rob you, and that's what they've been doing since 1860s. In other words, this is what it is. They've gotten to the point where they've pretty much drawn all the blood out of the carcass of the people and are now ready to dump the carcass. And this is what our people don't understand. In other words, look at the nation, the actual people, from the perspective that you look at as an insect that was caught by a spider, and the spider being large and the people being large, the nation being drained of its resources, its blood. And now that it's almost what you would call raisinized, they're in the process of trying to extract whatever's left with the intention of dropping the carcass. That's what's happening politically. And I'm recognizing that a lot of people still don't get it.
What would be the point? I mean, are they trying now to assimilate or to move us into, as they call this one world, new world order, one world government, where
remember
they shift. Yeah.
Yes, along the line what you said. Remember I said before they're going to force the people in the CBDCs.
Yeah.
That's central bank digital currencies.
Right.
In other words, what does that really represent? Re-enslavement. Only more total and more. See, this is back to the idea that the people have that they've been having money. But what is the CBDCs demonstrating? They're admitting to you that you didn't have money, or they wouldn't have to do that. Why are they convincing, why are they going through all this effort to convince you to accept this new platform, which they have no authority to introduce anyway? But the fact that they've drained your resources, this is why secretly, and they haven't been making it public, part of the US military has been going around the world collecting gold. You know that, right?
Yeah, I heard that.
Are you aware of that?
I heard that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, to restore what was stolen from Fort Knox, you can go back to the Clinton administration and even before that. Now you understand why, they were squashing all the records in their computers with the Secretary of State at that time, who was Hillary Clinton. Now you understand the motive. But these things are not limited to that administration. It's been going on since Lincoln. Now, so when you don't make the connection, they can control the narrative. And one of the other things, because remember, they're converting estates, right? So little by little, it's leaking out, and it's still a diversion, valid, but it's diversion. This whole thing with Diddy is a cover-up of government operations and APAC, who really owns the industry that they've been protecting. Diddy represents right now a piñata for the dissolution of one of the limited platforms upon which indigenous people were allowed to enjoy any of their own resources under the guise of possessing wealth that they still didn't have, but an outlet. All of the other outlets were locked to us. So now they must kill all of the gatekeepers and steal their estates to protect the threat against the corporations' privatized estate that the people have been trained is public interest of the national venue that they overthrew Lincoln administration. This is what people don't get. And I suggest to you, just do a synopsis read of the Clearfield Doctrine and just make your own determination. And then just talk to me while talking to the people what you comprehend. Because for our conversation to really have meaning and for you to present or interject functional information, you have to have the concept. And look at from the position, what were the presenters for the Clearfield Trust Company, right? What is their actual position? Remove the legalization mentality that people have and look at the substance of their argument and express it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for that for you. I want you to interject what you feel.
Well, I mean, when you look at what it was about, so the defense said that the Clearfield Trust Company cashed a forged check.
Yes.
And that therefore.
So now the forged check represents a fraud, right?
Right.
A fraud.
Right.
Now, so the United States, keep in mind, presented as legitimate government authority is approaching a remedy or cure of for the fraud, preparing to charge someone else with the fraud, right?
Yeah.
Now you already know the issue is latches, which is mean timely action on the instrument. You already know what that is. But the deal that I'm saying to you that I want you to recognize is what is the nature of the argument of the presenters for the Clearfield trust company that manifests, that caused the Clearfield doctrine to become established law. We mean the doctrine is established law. That's now stare decisis principle, right? Or res judicata principle, right? How is it, what's the basis upon which that authority comes about to establish it as stare decisis?
Well, I mean, from a standpoint of who they were, I mean, I've heard it said that they meaning the federal portion, were seen as a corporation.
Not as a, see, this is now, we got to get away from
a corporation.
No, now that's, we got to be specific.
Okay.
In other words, like, this is what the basis is. A fraudulent organization cannot charge another organization or person with fraud when they have no sovereign authority themselves, because they themselves have become a fraud.
But the United States won the case. So I don't get that.
You see, that's what I want you. Now this is where I want you to be. That's the clarity. You need to get, and this is the point that I'm making to you that we need people to observe. The Clearfield doctrine comes about because the United States, the persons claiming to be the United States are really not the country that they've been claiming the sovereign authority from. They abandoned it sine die, and they're claiming the sovereign authority for their personal benefit when they're really private corporation that has no allegiance to the people or the land whatsoever. And they've been operating with the sovereignty that don't belong to them, to the disadvantage and to the injury of the people. But it's been targeted to us for so many generations, and it was assumed by the middle-class Europeans because they were benefiting from this fraud that they weren't talking about it. But the Clearfield doctrine is essentially the presenters for the Clearfield Trust Company saying to them, you've been pretending to be happy to clown and getting over on these people and taxing them for all these decades unlawfully and gotten wealthy, and have created a separate class of people and set shell corporations up with different names from the Gates family and the rest of them and the Rockefellers and all the rest of them. And that's the basis of your wealth. And you gonna come at us for a $24 check? Like we don't know that you're really happy to clown just because the people don't know? That nature of reality composes what is now known as the Clearfield Doctrine. In other words, you have people, organized private corporate persons who have been personating as government for decades and have successfully robbed the resources of the people and then misclassified it as national debt. And now they're trying to collect because they've matured and no one's buying the bonds. Now you understand why Trump and Elon is liquidating departments, trying to hold off the gates of hell. And the only reason why it's not total collapsing is because of the military operation that's already in place. Meaning that if the military operation wasn't already in place, they would be literally kicked out. Like, remember what the Bush said, if they really knew it, the people really knew what we've done, what they would do?
Yeah.
It's exactly that. Now, middle class Europeans who really know what's really been happening, they're not shouting it from the rooftops. First of all, they wouldn't be taken serious by the masses, right? But for those who understand, this is why they're going directly and suing in their private capacities the pseudo officers of the tax assessment offices, which is the biggest part of the, not only the biggest part of the fraud that's breaking the system, and it can't be reversed, meaning that it can't be fixed. Don't start talking about fix it. You can't fix it. It won't be fixed. But they have to go on pretending that they're doing things to legislate or fix or cure, and it's all BS. And the people who are falling for the narrative are doing things in their personal life to disconnect and are going to get caught because they're coming for everything. They're going to destroy the families before they fall. That's the point. That's the war. That's the silent weapon. It's fruiting now. It's fruiting now. And the fact that people, when some of this stuff has been presented, they're looking at it as interesting data, but in fact have done little to nothing in their personal lives to protect themselves from the internal enemy who not is their government, has been personating as government since the Sina Dia activities. And because it spans over 100 years, they're not making the connection. So the Satanists are in a process currently of sacrificing people, their careers, their intellectual properties, their retirement funds. Like I told you a couple of years ago, they already stole all the teacher stuff. You're going to see people who don't understand this yet, teachers as an example, since I've mentioned that going to be quitting their jobs with no job to go to because they're losing staying and they're losing leaving. But then if they stay, they see the collapse coming and they don't understand it, but they're in this
conundrum,
gray area. Now, what I'm saying, we need to get the people, even though it's hard, not to respond to this happening emotionally, which is the first place most people will go to, which will make them easy victims. The sacrifices and the collateral damage is unavoidable. I'm not going to present some kind of argument or remedy that's not there. I am saying, for those who are not doing little subtle things to look out for their families and their own survival, will suffer the consequence of not acting on this information that we've been giving them for decades. Because it's not coming, it's here.
So you have some actionable steps that people can be.
This is what's happening. I'm saying so that people don't, what do we do? What do we do?
That's what people want to know.
Yeah, of course they want to know. See, this is the point. People want to know what to do with what they should have done decades ago to remedy the fruit that's on their doorstep now. And so we're saying to them, this is what I say from a spiritual point of view. For what you have left in the cupboard, Create your own intelligent austerity with yourself that's going to be and is on you now anyway, outside of your choice to do anything one way or another. You, whether you like it or not, are now in survival mode that's not being admittedly made to you publicly. All right? To pretend that because we understand what's going on, that therefore remedy, because the remedy has been ignored. This is what I'm saying. The remedies have been ignored.
Okay.
We're fruiting now. The harvest is now. And so rather than them admit or even own up, this is why they're firing departments. And this is why the representative from that other side that they've been paying since the war tax, since the 17s, taxing on your property, giving it to those people over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's been funding, whether you like it or not, what you agree with or not, what you claim or not, what your emotions are, is irrelevant. The deed is done. It's collapsing now. And the world is turning on them. Now, what is presented in this near future is alliances. And you better find out who your friends are, and you better acknowledge that the people you thought was your government is your enemy. Always has been. Just because they didn't they publicized it, but that's Trading with the Enemy Act.
Right.
And the War Tax Act and the Internal Revenue Act. All of them are part of the war.
Right. Against the people.
The fact that the people thought they were legitimate government is where the gray area of confusion is. So people must familiarize themselves with these things so they can see how it does not apply. And this is why, like years ago when I did this, and I want you to look at this, and you can make statements as you please to, but I want to show you how things we've told the people that, you know, we can't make people do. We can't make people have alliances. You know, like people will ask for remedy. You give it to them, they'll attack you personally as if you're responsible for their responsibility to honor their own issue of a state, and still look for someone else to do what only they can do. And it is not unlike the issue of, you know, having to bear their own cross type thing. You know, which is why we have that there. Right? Just read these few things. Now keep in mind the presenters for the Clearfield Doctrine are clear on this, always has been. But remember, civics has been deliberately denied targeted people, which is why our people never take civics seriously, right? And where they were getting a little bit antsy, this is what I mentioned, the Eisenhower administration, when they relinquished jurisdiction at Morocco, and thus denied the venue of the consular venue, which is the venue for treaty and constitutional enforcement. That's the venue. That is the venue. Article 3, Section 2. That is the venue. And then they introduced the 14th Amendment civil rights argument, 54, 55, and then put presenters, gatekeepers, to start marching around promoting it, and our people bought into it. Now it's bearing fruit. The nations aren't buying the treasury bonds. All big city projects are funded by the bond system. which now is dead for real, to cover it up. The handlers of APAC told Trump to do tariffs to cover it up, the fact that the trade is stagnated. In other words, if they're not accepting the treasury bonds, can international trade continue? If they're not accepting the bonds that fund it, because remember, they're not dealing with money, they're dealing with bond trades.
Right.
That's the real bondage. They're not accepting the bondage. And to protect themselves, because they know that MI6, Mossad, and CIA are immediately going to come after their leaders to neutralize them in order to reestablish the hegemony that's now threatened. So Donald Trump was, because that wasn't his idea, you need to understand this.
The tariffs.
They're told what to do, but the people think he has power. The handlers told him to do the tariffs so they could use the tariff argument to cover up the fact that the economic international trade system is broken. No one's accepting the bonds, which means all of these big commercial buildings, hotels, complexes are silent. Next move, now it's going to the private houses that they have hypothecated in 33 and hypothecated prior to that with 1913 and then the institution of the War Tax Act in order to fund Israel. In all these years, these people's private property, including this property here, all the taxes that they've been extracting from you under the guise of property tax by the tax assessment office operating at Wilmington Corporation, subdivision of Delaware Corporation, have been personally robbing you and everybody else around here. And now they can't re-up the bonds because they've overlapped so many times that the debt is accelerating faster than they can collect anything. And if they collected everybody's wealth right now, it still is not enough. So what are they going to do? What are they doing? The Satanists do what they've always done, except they're internalizing it more now. They're warring on the people, and the people aren't awake that they're warring on them, which means a lot of people, they definitely going to be economically and socially assassinated. What they don't understand that they're going to be physically.
Don't you think that we're seeing the fruit of that from some things that happened over the last 4 years, 5 years?
This is where
5 years?
No.
I mean, no, I'm saying from that part of people being eliminated or as part of
this is what you got to look at how Satanists work.
Okay.
All right. Now, their first bio is not the first one, but the most recent one, which is COVID operations, which is SARS-2, right? Mm-hmm. Multiplied and modified 7 times. Fort Detrick, Maryland, not China, Maryland, blamed on China because China was an ultimate target, right? Then you got to tie that to the history of the Opium Wars initiated against the Manchurian families by Britain, U.S. corporation company, Israel, even though their foundation wasn't established. That they're still the same people, right? That was one of their gifts out of their wars. This is what people don't understand about geopolitics. They don't make many people don't make the dimensional and the time warp connections. They don't see the collage. But those who see the collage knew this was coming. And their intent was, when this collapse comes, their intent was to sacrifice us. That's the point. Problem is that the middle class European is being sacrificed, and they're not having it. This is what you're seeing and what you're going to see as this accelerates. Now, Donald J. Trump, by assignment, taking on Elon Musk. Why? Because they're dealing with ancient technology, not modern technology, that they're naming at this time AI. It's not new, it's old.
Right.
To try to save themselves politically. The masses are arguing money, and money is not in the public venue. Hasn't been. But that's the mental they're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those who are governing, who are not government, are going to sacrifice the people in order to save their private corporation. That's the privatization war that's current and has been operative, but it's being accelerated as we speak. Point that I'm making. I'm not saying do this, that, or the other to save yourself. I'm saying for the few that can be, maybe can be, look the wolf in the eye. Don't look away. Meaning that I'm not asking the people not to agree. I'm telling you it's in your interest not to agree, because that's the only power you got left. They've stripped you of all your sovereignty and has used it and contaminated it to conquer the world. And with some of the people, they've even sold their soul to them. The redemption, I can't argue what the redemption is. That's up to them. That must be done. Every individual must decide their alliance, their allegiance. But at the same time, I am also saying, for the multiple angles by which the information has presented, they've been told over and over again. So anything we say is redundant. But what I am saying, that storm that they're dreading to come is already in place. Their blindness or their unwillingness, their denial blindness is what blocks them from seeing. But that doesn't make them safe, meaning that ignoring it doesn't make you safe. And I think we collectively as a people have spent so much time in denial that there's a subtle sense of security in it that did not exist, doesn't exist, and won't save them. However, there is this aspect of our people over the generations promoting and boasting that they're spiritual. And what I'm saying is, activate your claim.
Activate your claim. Are you talking about status?
They said they were spiritual. Do your work. They said they were connected to the ancestors, right? Do your work. Meaning that, it's sort of like this. Like you've been a DJ and you made music and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here's the mic, sing. That's what I'm saying. Don't try to tell me that you can sing. Don't try to convince me that you can blow the saxophone. Don't try to convince me, or don't try to prove that you're a drummer. Here's your sticks. This is what's been presented to all of us. And I'm saying to you, that's where we all are. You know how the people say, To save yourself?
Yeah.
Well, take your word for it, not mine. But I can say this. Much of the capacity for activation has to do whether you internally are sincerely rejecting Rome, not saying it. Meaning that don't prove nothing to me, I don't prove nothing to you. You either with Rome or you're not. If you're with Rome, you're going down with Rome. The little that we have left to rebuild with, because remember the order is not salvageable. That let's make that clear from day one. So whatever building properties that you, me have, we have, you better exercise it. You know how, like you said, when we were talking earlier, I may be good in gardening.
Yes.
And don't put me in a position that's not in the spirit of my being.
Absolutely.
Let that being be who she or he was born to be. Stop interfering with your false jurisdiction, molding them.
Right.
Philosophy page. There are molding hands.
Mm-hmm.
Molding them to be to your service and training them under animal husbandry for generations that they can't see their own estate. That everything they do is for you to disperse under human resource capital. That's the basis of your operations, right? Then they take that and they create bonds. Now let's come another way to make it more simple for some people to get what we're presenting. Since it's the biggest fraud of the frauds, current, right? Which is the tax assessment office in all the municipalities for extracting the equity from people, particularly since 1917's 1317 actions with the war tax, revenue tax, income tax, misclassification, etc. Funding some people that are claiming something that they're not successfully, and have been genociding with the support of these same people here who have been pretending to be government since the 60s, 1860s, successfully.
Mm-hmm.
And now have pretty much broken every moral or ethical or jurisdictional principle known to the international venue. And in fact, they have admittedly don't acknowledge international law so that they can do what they've been doing continuously with this 500-year war of the unum sanctum operations, right? Which is the real canvas of their politics, right?
Right.
The fact that the masses have not known that doesn't change the reality that it has culminated to the fruit era, to the fruit stage. Either way, it's harvested or falls to the ground. Either way, it's coming off. Meaning that it is past the stage, is not redeemable. It's not redeemable. So any argument in that arena would be interesting, but it would be a diversion because you already know it's past tense. Right. Meaning that it's only there because it's there. It's not there because it can function. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go back again, and I'll read some of this. Right? Now keep in mind, now let's deal with the 16th Amendment fraud upon which the equity is stolen from the estates of the people via property tax to fund an organization of Satanists who have been claiming to be godly people and claiming for decades to be somebody that they're not, who really own the Congress of the corporation that they also own, that these people keep voting for and arguing about parties affiliation, which indicate that they're in the narrative.
Because you're sending these so-called representatives
Yes.
to be a part of the fraud.
They are the not
to be the fraud.
They are
to be the fraud. Yeah.
Now, examples. In Stampton versus Baltic Mining Company, 20 U.S. 103, 1916 timeline. Write this down, y'all, so that you challenge anything that I'm telling you, and go do the research yourself, because most of your family's going to need it. And as things are not going to falling apart, you can come together with your family members to try to stabilize some of your homes and stuff, because many of you that may be listening to me right now may be on the street within a month. That's how fast it's accelerating. Because they're leaving the commercial venue, which is already collapsed. Now it's going into the private home that they're going to be sacrificing to try to save their private corporation mercilessly. Don't start looking for mercy. It ain't happening. So don't go there. Use your intelligence. The 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation, that's to the people that claim to be Congress, but simply prohibited the previous complete and plenary power of income taxation possessed by the Congress. So you must understand the power and the authority that once vested with them for the taxation left with the sine die operations. From that point on, they are personating government and fraudulently using authority that no longer exists with them. But out of threat, duress, and coercion, and maintaining the seats that they abandoned, they've been using the sovereignty power against the people here to drain their resources, pretending to represent them when they really present Israel. That's called AIPAC, disguised as lobbyists who really own the United States Corporation Company, who own the music industry, who own the banking industry, who own the entertainment industry, that own Disney and the rest of them, and they hide them under shell corporations with their major monetary translation or laundering operations located geographically in an area known as, what's it next to Russia right now?
Ukraine.
Huh?
Ukraine.
Say it louder.
Ukraine.
That's where it's at. Including the bio laboratories. The most of them are also located there. And also the child trafficking major hub for the planet is located Ukraine. That's the real truth. It's not against the people themselves, not the private people. That's the corporate operatives. Now, Clearfield Doctrine, what they're saying to them, to the United States, just because the masses don't know you're a private corporation that's been systematically raping the people, you're not going to do it to us. You're no different than somebody coming behind Macy's or coming from behind the counter in McDonald's talking about you want to fine us for not having our left sneak tied up. And you've been doing this to these people under a color of law for generations and getting away with it, and you're not doing it to us. That's the Clearfield Doctrine. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. I'm making an analysis that's really true in order for people to get it, because you can show them the case and people still in their mind, because people are still battling the concept of what they think government is, as opposed to what it actually is and is not. This is why you saw over the last decade or so, Dr. G, that as soon as someone mentioned the word sovereignty, how people from alleged government positions were attacking people who even mentioned the word sovereignty. That is the divine right that belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to government at all, never did. It's the divine right of your existence. That's what sovereignty is. Now you understand why they converted allodial titles and Aboriginal titles, 1913, on Jekyll Island, and they keep diverting the argument to fiat currency when the real deal was conversion of a state was the major issue that the people are suffering from right now. And they set up property tax assessment offices in all of the jurisdictions to systematically rob the equity of all the people's private property, and their biggest investment was their home and land. That's property tax. None of it, then or now, was or is constitutional or lawful. And even if it was, they were not and are not the authority to implement the tax because they abandoned the seats sine die. Now, do you understand the Clearfield Doctrine? Think on it, analyze it. Now, the point that I'm making is this, Dr. J. The implications and the negative consequences are manifesting across the world right now. It's not just here. It's manifesting, and people who don't see it, they're feeling the trouble, but they still don't. I'm simplifying what's really happening. What the bond system breaking. And when you understand what's really happening in the background, even though it may not make sense on the surface, you understand why they set up what they call now Doge. Mm-hmm. And it ain't going to work. It's making an attempt, but it's not going to work. And that's not criticism to them. But I'm telling you, it's sort of like people see them liquidating and still don't get that their actions are telling you that they're operating or executing bankruptcy. They're executing bankruptcy. All the other stuff is diversion. They're talking the tariffs to make you think that the tariffs are doing this. No, the bond system is broken. No one's buying the bonds. The bonds have overlapped and overlapped and overlapped yearly, and now exponentially, the debt or the principal on the interest on the debt is accelerating faster than anything that they can imagine to do to satisfy it. It's broke.
Irreparably broken.
There is no fix. What they're doing probably is trying to keep things stable enough that they have any credibility whatsoever to, in extreme emergency powers, which is happening and going to get worse, reestablish a different form of government and try to introduce it without admitting to the people that that's what they're doing. And they're going through different motions and emotions to keep the people busy while they're racing to fix the unfixable and establish another form of government that will be closer to a socialist structure by necessity, that everything that and doesn't just absolute collapse and you go into absolute chaos in the street. Now, so I told you, watch him.
Watch him who?
Trump.
Oh.
But now, this is the other thing that I want you to pay attention to. The reason I told you about Deutsche Bank, because remember, all of the people that you thought were your government, congressmen, congresswomen, and stuff, most of their so you call inside trading benefits is housed in Deutsche Bank. They all got wealthy off your estates while we've been playing partiality between the parties, ignoring our responsibility to enforce treaty and constitution. Now we're paying the price because the sovereignty belonged to the people all the time. It never belonged to the government. And the people who have been exercising that sovereignty are impersonators, private, and their wealth is based on equity that they've stole from the people here, starting with us and ending with the middle class that they raped, and now they're discarding them. So, like I told you before, Dr. G, the middle class Europeans will be backing up what I said.
And we see
I don't have
that
to say nothing else.
they already are doing that.
No, I'm just saying. And I'm saying that relative to the trolls among our own who've been playing this counter move, working for the system, you know, being unreasonably disagreeable type thing to try to keep the people asleep because they've been benefiting from residuals. And so remember, their estates are going to be liquidated too.
Well, they are actually watching, and they are actually, you know, reaching out.
In other words, I'm pointing it out because if people get out their emotions, you'll see it. I won't have to tell you.
Right.
However, when you see it, you can start thinking in your mind yourself, little subtle things, adjustments that you make in your life to limit and to avoid the consequences. You can't avoid it all, but you won't be walking in the doo-doo on the lawn ignorantly, if you get the point. You can start tiptoeing through the tulips. Uncomfortable, but you can start doing whatever you can do. And you will, the other deal is, Dr. G, is so that people can be among them, their own selves, willingly stop wasting their energy on things that are no worth. And this is another reason, and the Manchurian families have been trying to help us. You know how they've been trying to help us? By exposing the diamond industry and the bag industry that our people with their egos have been wasting fortunes on, being had. And what they're telling you, the same thing that they've been doing with the Birkin bags and stuff, that you've been doing the same thing with people that you thought was your government. And what they've done, they did that to show you directly that the tariff thing is a fraud front. The real deal is international trade has crashed because no one's accepting the bonds. So since then they want to blame them. So they're telling you what everybody knew that you weren't told anyway. The $500 belt, $2.50. The bag that you spent $30,000 for,
$40.
$298. And it's been that. It ain't coming to that. It's been that.
It was never worth it.
That Rolex is a Timex. Same thing, if you get the point. Not exactly, but you know.
I get it.
In other words, our vanity has helped the hybrid European trap us. And this is again why, you know, humble is the way, Dr. J.
Yeah.
Now, it's another case, right? In Eisner versus Macomber, right? 252 U.S. 189, 205, that's 1920. The Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment must be construed in connection with the taxing clauses of the original Constitution and the effect attributed to them before the 16th Amendment was adopted. Now, if you don't understand that, this is how they've been screwing you. And this is the basis of your poverty that you're experiencing right now, and the robbery of your equity from your private properties that they've successfully done. This is what must be understood. They've successfully done it, and they're liquidating your estates to save themselves currently. That's the invocation of their private war against the people, manifested or manifestation fruit of war powers, trading with the enemy, revenue raising, etc., tax, etc. All of them, 1910, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then when the collapse took place, then 25, that's when I showed you the papers. Remember the papers I showed you? Now, that's why that was done in Florida. And then this is what Roosevelt did in 33 with the Banking Act. Then he pledged the people's lives through their birth certificates to refund them again. And it's played out again. And now you're at the fruit. It's harvest. So they harvest you or you harvest yourself. You make that decision. Mm-hmm. But the deal of it is, it's not fixable now. So that's the point, because it's sort of like people are still trying to fix the system, or trying to look for a remedy to fix the system in the system. The system is terminal. So that's where everything is. Now, logically, people who know what's happening are putting their energy in fixing their lives. Dumping dead weight, not going into any kind of debt, knowing that debt's going to be called, and also knowing that overnight credit cards and things like that are going to stop working. And the people have been trained to operate on those. So if they're not doing anything to, address that, the consequences are kind of obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we've said a lot. We've said a lot, and, don't want to leave people with.
We're not leaving. You see, this is what I'm saying to you, Dr. J.
Yeah.
Welcome to the real world, and placation is not a good thing to do right now. People are in trouble. The storm is here, but they're going to have to start facing things. They can't keep on hiding or putting their head in the sand, and they can't keep supporting the system that's designed to destroy them and their families, pretending that they don't see it. That's what I'm saying. To do nothing about it is to capitulate to it, because they're going to sacrifice all who are blind, and all who pretend to be blind will be the easiest sacrifice, because they never take the hard route. But remember, they never fix anything based on moral principle. They fix things only because they have no choice. That's where they are now. This is why you see Trump and Elon using AI to literally dissolve departments of government that can no longer be carried. So that means people who have jobs within them venues, most of them have been receiving what they considered, quote unquote, reasonable pay. Their lives are going to change radically overnight. And most of them, having no civic knowledge whatsoever, are going to crack up from the pressures, because they're going to lean on their emotions and not on their intelligence. Plus, they don't associate with people with intelligence to solve problems. Therefore, they will be sacrificed. They refer to them from the corrupt impersonators as useless eaters. and will be treated accordingly. That's what's going on now. And I'm not tempted to pretend.
No.
You know, how you say, tie your sneaks together and therefore, you know, you'll race better. No, I'm not going to say that. Some other people will say that. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say this, not from a spiteful position, nor not from a judgmental position, because we're all in this boat. I'll say this, I told you so. And I told you so long ago. Harvest time is here. The harvest is taking place right now. And it's against humans. The battle is a 500-year, over 500 years. So much of my conversation really has not been vacuumed to the present. It's actually spans hundreds of years. But the deal of it is, rather than go down, they're trying to take humanity down. The more you're connected to them, the more you're apt to go down with them. And I'm not looking from a perspective of saying, let's get together and, you know, say, kumbaya. I'm saying to you, recognize that there'll be a handful to work with. Hopefully they'll have the intelligence and absence of emotional banter to really get something done, because we're going to need it. For real, for real, for real. And people who have been connected to the system, feeling secure, are going to be insecure overnight. And it ain't coming, it's in process. In process currently. They're just artfully hiding it. So don't blind yourself and don't pretend you don't know, and don't pretend you don't see, and don't pretend you weren't told. Go over what we've told you for the years and use what your intelligence and spirit tells you to do. Don't think that your ancestors haven't been around to help you, because they have.
Speaking of ancestors, I'd like to do, if you all don't mind, just take a moment. Let's go into the spiritual side, because we have a power sometimes that we don't tap into. So if you would, just for a moment, those of you who are on this live, let's take a moment together. Let's breathe in deeply. I'm not going to take you through a meditation, but I want you to breathe in deeply. And as you breathe in deeply, I want you to call forth your ancestors in your heart, in your heart. I want you to speak your true name, and I want you to speak their name silently to yourself. I want you to call those that you know, call them forth. Let's breathe deeply again. And I want you to repeat after me. I invoke the blood.
I invoke the blood
that runs through me.
that runs through me.
I invoke the land that bore me. I invoke the land that bore me.
I invoke the land that bore me.
I invoke the law that governs me from within.
I invoke the law that governs me from within.
Let's do that again. I invoke the blood that runs through me.
I invoke the blood that runs through me.
I invoke the land that bore me.
I invoke the land that bore me.
I invoke the law that governs me from within.
I invoke the law that governs me from within.
You are not lost. You are never lost.
That's right.
And this is your return. This is your return. And there are things that, you know, there are actions that can be followed.
That's the redemption.
Start with your spiritual self. And then as you feel the power of ancestors working in and through you and on your behalf, and they surely will, because we don't call on them enough.
Yes.
Then you will be able to have that courage to step forward too, if we haven't correct your status, to file your, the affidavit of life, if to learn trust law and get your trust, even though time, they say they've moved the clock up to a few seconds before midnight, learn trust law, study your inheritance, let's, come together on some other levels. Grand Sheik, my book is in progress and almost ready. Oh, and I do have something in there that is going to just sort of some when you say what now, there's a what now section in there that'll be able to, and I want to maybe even make it available before the book comes. Take that segment out and make it available. I don't know if you all would like to see that, you know, and
a preface edition.
Right. So that I could, you know, it's kind of some things that we can do going forward. It's from the book. But I think the time is urgent.
Yeah, you know it is.
And so I'm, you know, if
the time is current.
It's current and now. So I mean, the best way for me to probably get it out. Here's one thing, you know, we are, you know, our website has been down for probably a year now, almost, right? So we absolutely have our website in progress. I'm real happy. Grateful to Brother Raj, who is working on our website along with us, and we're pretty sure maybe in the next few weeks we'll actually have it up and active. But I want to make it available. I want to make it available, you know, that for, you know, ahead of the book.
Yes.
For people. Also, while I have their attention, I want to give a shout out to Consul General Lamont Maurice L. I believe this is his solar return.
Yes. So happy solar return.
Happy solar return.
Yes.
Consul General Lamont Maurice L. And we appreciate you and all that you are doing to assist us here at Help House of Reawakening Minds. I really do appreciate that. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. And somebody asked me about what's on my shirt. Let me just stand up a little bit. It says, where there's an L, there's a bay. Look, there's an L. So yeah, somebody asked me earlier, but I didn't want to stand up. What's the, I don't know where I got, I don't know if somebody said this to me or what, but yeah, so I want to make that available. We're soon going to have our website available, and that'll be the easier way. That way I won't have to literally send it to everybody. Just keep, you know, on the lookout. Also, I want to say that we have our Fourth Friday coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, Fourth Friday coming up. And I don't have the correction on here yet right now, but our very own Grand Sheik on the new one, I couldn't post it while we were live, but Grand Sheik will also be at House of Reawakening Mind. Those of you who haven't seen him in a long time and want to meet and greet him in person on Friday, June 27th, 7 p.m. Doors open at 6:30. So when a new flyer comes, when I put it up the next time, it'll actually have
interjection too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Watch what takes place in the stock market and with the commercial venues bleeding down into the private housing venues between now today, right? And the 27th.
Okay.
That'll give you how many days? It's like 21 days, 21 days.
I don't know. But we, you know.
Watch. In other words, start taking notes.
If you're watching the stock market, you mean just for what you hear?
What we've told you, you'll be able to start documenting the acceleration. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So that is, and Grand Sheik, tomorrow, just while I have you guys on here, I'm actually having a launch, and I would love for as many people who could probably come to come and be on my private launch tomorrow. And if you'd like to actually be there, which I'd like to have you there, just let's see if I can put that up. I don't think I can get it up there, but trying to get this up. Here's the link. If you just go to zoom.com, and the meeting ID is 581-669-8276. The passcode is Diamond. I'd love to have as many of you as possible for my launch tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Also tomorrow, let me get, you know, we leave it up for a minute so you can get that in case you want to come on at 8 p.m. Eastern and see what's up. We're having a farmer's market. I mean, we're having a actual, anybody who's in the area. And when I say in the area, I mean close enough to get to where we are, can come to House of Reawakening Minds. Grand Sheik's going to be there. We're having a community flea market and sale, and we have all kinds of things. He's been here helping.
Yep, new and almost new, and
news and metal. I mean, all kinds of. I mean, everything. It's like there's so much stuff there. And Grand Chic will be here tomorrow. It's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the House of Reawakening Minds. So if you're in Delaware, New Jersey, PA, close enough to get here, stop through. You can see Grand Chic. And like I said, there tomorrow at 8. It's a busy day for me. My meeting, my business launch, and it's on Zoom, and you are all invited to actually come and be stop through, say hi to Grand Chic and myself, and we'd love to see you. Sister Cynthia Martinell is here from Houston. Brother Chris is here from Canada. Been here with me all week, so you want to see, come out and check us out. And we're also excited about our new song our new House of Reawakening.
Oh yes, I love that.
The House of Reawakening song that we have a new theme song. We're just waiting for the video accomplishment. Look, awesome job that Brother Raj Bristol Bay has done, and we think you'll like it. But anyway, don't go anywhere.
You'll love it.
Yeah, I think you'll love it. So we appreciate each and every one of you for being with us. And as soon as the website is done, I'm going to have that out up there as a free download that people can get, and hopefully it'll be something that we can start to use. So
now, as we mentioned earlier, because we went through a collage of different things, being more specific for them to pay attention to.
Okay.
How like many of our people are addressing, quote unquote, their community problems, economic stability, commercial corruption of certain products being sold in our neighborhoods that are not sold in other neighborhoods, and drug paraphernalia stuff like that they don't see in other communities. I understand that's part of the war. However, as you all know, as people are being made homeless and semi-homeless because of the conversion of the states accelerating now, and because nations are no longer buying U.S. Treasury bonds, it's going to crash the housing market, not maybe going to. And they will sacrifice the people who are least politically astute first. Are we clear? People who are politically astute will go either into suits or use their resources and redirect them, where the average everyday people don't have that as a remedy. They just lose everything.
Right.
Now, get together with people among yourselves who are not emotionally charged, but are informationally charged, and structure suits against the private and personal status of people, particularly related to property assessment officers who have been systematically robbing you for APAC and you didn't know it, right? And they will continue to do it as long as you allow it, until there's a stopgap. Because remember, the judicial system is run from Fleet Street, England. They're part of the problem. That's why you have to come together, organize.
Right.
And if you don't institute personal suits, by the time the people start considering to do something, most of them will be on the curb. And this will become tent city like it is in San Francisco.
Yeah, because they say govern yourself or be governed.
That's because because remember, they're going to liquidate the people's estates to save themselves. And though it still ain't enough, they're buying time. But the deal is they will destroy lives trying to save their corruption.
Right.
That's the point that I'm making.
Right.
So don't hesitate to start using your brain.
Yeah, and we want you to, if we thank you for all 900 and some plus of you who are on here. We hope that you'll share. Like we said, please like, share, and subscribe if you have not already done so to our channel. And, support us at when and where you can. We appreciate the support. The other thing is, soon in the new website, we're going to make the USB drive downloadable. So people will be able to, you still be a purchase, it'll be less than it is, but you'll be able to download it. And then when we do updates, the updates will be little separate little patches, but we're going to make it so that wait for it to be set.
So you've got a background.
Yeah, we're doing.
But the deal of it is because of the de facto nature coming from London, right? Don't confuse the lack of remedy where it should be as being your fault. Understand that the corruption is from top to bottom. Don't confuse the two. Don't think that your effort is failure. They want you to think your effort is failure so that you give up. Do you understand?
Right. Well, okay. This is Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is pursuing legislation to allow Texas to use gold and silver as legal tender for transactions, and as it should be. That's important. But what should be added to that is that the theft that was done by them by virtue of a lack of this should be restored. How would they do that?
It's called restitution on their part. Meaning that they should not be allowed to keep the gains that they have stolen from the people under false legislated voucher system that denied the gold and silver. Now look at this, and let's say this, Dr. J. So, Constitution to which these people are obligated, and that includes Greg Abbott and the rest of them prior to him and before, that no state shall make what? Gold or silver coin for payment of debt. That already exists. How can he, in other words,
that's the legal sentence that they could ignore.
You got to understand these people are see, they're doing things like that to save themselves because they know what's coming. Because remember, these people will be guillotined.
That's treason. All right.
In other words, you can't do the treason and then they say, forgive me. Oh, guess what? We can use, well, I'm going to allow you to use gold and silver.
Isn't that constitutional?
That's the established law of the land already. See, this is what I'm saying, Dr. T. See, they're trying to back up and look like they haven't been part of it. The Constitution already exists.
Right.
Is that a constitutional convention? No, it isn't. We say, oh, we're thinking about acknowledging our obligation tied to the office that we're pretending to hold.
Somebody says that, where's Taj getting information from? Foreign nations are still buying U.S. Treasury bonds. Foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury.
No, they're not.
Top $9 trillion in March 2025 with Japan.
The only ones are vassal states. Do the research. Japan have been dumping them, and they're the first level holders. Stop lying.
Okay. All right. We finished. Y'all listen, we gonna go. We appreciate each and every one of you for being here with us tonight. And as I said, don't forget, Grand Chic will be in person, House of Awakening Minds, Friday, June 27, 2025. We love to see your face in the place.
They wish they were still buying them bonds because
deeper and deeper I go. I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time. But you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me. Come to know and find out what is true. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.